I'm sure most of you guys, like myself, have seen the footage of what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia this weekend, and it's horrible. I had to stop watching the scene of where the car literally drove into the crowd, killing the, I believe, 32-year-old female. And I know other people were injured. Some folks are in critical condition right now. Then two police officers who were in a helicopter trying to observe what was happening down below, their helicopter crashed and they died. So again, right now, a total of 3 lives connected to an incident that should have never taken place, and definitely it's all hate. So 3 people are dead right now because of this foolishness. So let's have some real talk about where we are right now as a country. This country right now has a president that is supported and endorsed by white supremacists. This country right now has a president who found it difficult to even disavow David Duke. This country right now has a president who, when making comments about what happened this weekend in Virginia, said that there are many sides to this story. No, there's not many sides to this story. The people who were counter-protesting peacefully, okay, are not as equally culpable as the Nazis and white supremacists who came there with racist, hateful, and violent intentions. And your First Amendment right does not protect you to allow you to become violent. So when you show up for your demonstrations, Nazis, with helmets and other weapons and all this other kind of gear, you're clearly not there in peace. So for this country's president to say, basically, you know, there's issues on many sides. We shouldn't be shocked by what we saw this weekend, because this country has a president that made the Nazis and the white supremacists and David Duke walk away from his comment this weekend feeling that he has their back, that he did not throw them under the bus. They've said before, we know he has to use certain wording just because you know he got to say it. But if you ever notice, he'll always kind of layer that with something that doesn't just throw us under the bus. He did it again this weekend. The media could do me a favor. And I straight up, you know, I never watch Fox News. Why would I watch Fox News? But all the other outlets that I watch and all the other people who are saying the right things, especially the politicians. That's mainly what I'm talking about here. Politicians and talking heads on some of these news shows. All of those people who are saying this incident that happened this weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia, does not represent who America is or what America is. Stop lying. Yes, it does. It does represent what America is, because if it didn't, how else would you even explain the fact that Donald Trump, who can embrace white supremacists, fill his cabinet and his other advisory positions with people with white supremacist doctrines? How else could that even be real? So you can't say that what happened this weekend doesn't represent what America is. Because if we're going to fix this, we got to first be honest. This may be representing all too well what America is. So stop saying what happened this weekend doesn't represent America. Yes, it does. And you can see the evidence of that by your president and the words he used after such a tragic event took place. The talking heads on the news outlets love to talk about is the normalization of the right, and how they're so worried about the normalization of the right, and especially the extreme right, which was represented in Charlottesville, Virginia this weekend. that's a bunch of BS. I call BS on that too. Because the reality is, for marginalized communities, this has been normalized a long, long time ago. It has been built into systemic infrastructures that ensure the marginalization of groups of people. So this thing that we're seeing now is not some new wave of normalized deviant behavior in this country. What is different throughout the different periods in history where it was totally okay to be racist, from what was done with the Indians to what was done with slaveries, to even how all women were treated in this country, you know, to what were done to Japanese people. We could go on and on and on. So, you know, there's always been time over history where there have been rules to allow certain things to happen to certain groups of people. Certain shit was legal, is what I'm saying. So when you talk now about, oh my, you know, you see this from a lot of liberals, okay? The normalization of it all is just bothering me. The only thing that should bother anybody as far as normalization at this point in 2017 is that those deviants that used to be in the shadows, you know, they were more covert with their beliefs, okay? They now feel like they can come out of the shadows because the president of this country is a part of their belief system. So they just don't have to do it cloak and dagger anymore. They could just be out in the open. And I'm saying it this way and comparing it from a historical perspective, because even with the extreme acts that took place this weekend, with this white supremacist or multiple white supremacist groups coming together, right? The results of racism and just marginalizing groups and groups of people systemically has been done in this country throughout time, over years, by people who do not wear a swastika, who wear three-piece suits, who don't come off openly, necessarily, as if they're a part of those type people we saw this weekend in Virginia. But the outcome and the harm to groups and groups of people is rooted in the same. So when people are all up in arms about the normalization of what they're seeing now as if it's a new thing, stop with that. Stop with that. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new here. What could be new here, though, is if Americans of all colors, creeds, ages would stand up against this. We're right now, in this country, we're in a moral crisis. We are in a moral crisis. Which leads me to another point. Where y'all preachers at? Where are they? And when I say where are y'all preachers at, I'm talking specifically, where are the preachers, okay, when it comes to the racial divide in this country right now, the racism, the Nazis, the white supremacy rhetoric that is taking center stage and has been now ever since this candidate, who's now president, entered the race. Why are they not speaking on it? When there were rallies and people were being assaulted because of their race, why weren't they speaking on it? Why weren't they speaking on it? Why were they silent? I'm talking about all of the big time, big platform preachers. You know the ones who have shows on, maybe little 30-minute shows come on in the morning on different channels. They got books they're selling. They're on satellite radio. They're the big time pastors. The people we know. I'm going to call a couple out. T.D. Jakes, Joel Osteen. Where are they? Now, I know some things have been said. I know I've heard T.D. Jakes say a couple of things. I've heard him say one thing when he was on mainstream media on a show, which I was not impressed by. talking about hedging, okay? Then maybe another thing, if he's literally in his church, you know, Joel Osteen, you know, basically just comes off as, we just all need to love each other. Let me tell you something. This is the time for real religious leaders. And I'm not just saying Christianity, okay? But this is the time for real religious leaders, especially those with a high-profile platform, to come forward and lead the charge. That is, if you believe all the stuff you keep telling people, when you're getting all this money from your congregation and the books you're selling and your TV shows and your, you know, your big conventions and all of that. There is no way that you could be a true man or woman of God, okay, of whatever religion, see the moral crisis that we're having in this country, and yet you don't come forward. You guys are not coming together as clergy to have a voice on what's happening right now in this country? Am I the only one that sees something wrong with that? So before anybody puts in my comments, well, you know, you never know. People could be praying at home. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. You can pray wherever you want to pray. You can pray at home. You can pray only in your church. You can pray in your car. You can do whatever. But if you are, and I'm being very specific about the pastors with big platforms. If you are one of those pastors that are around here all the time preaching about how to live a better life and how to live more like God, okay, and to be all of this goodness, and you sit on the sidelines during a moral crisis such as the one this country is experiencing right now, I am going to say with no hesitation at all, I don't know what kind of God you serve. Because it would appear to me that you're more so serving yourself. If you're decent, you have to be uneasy about what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia this weekend. I still want to believe that there are far more people in this country on the side of goodness than those who are on the side of evil. All the stuff the media is showing you, polls, you know, they're showing you polls already about the president of this country, his approval ratings, all the stories that are nonstop about the chaos in the White House, the just total instability of this man. If you look at that stuff and you get complacent, you will have another 4 years of this type of thing. And who knows what that is going to bring. Is that going to bring a nuclear winter? Is that going to bring more of a racial divide in this country where it's out front, where we're back in the streets and literally fighting each other? Is that what is going to happen? So if you are a decent American, you need to show up where it counts. Election day is one of those days that counts. In your communities, in your state, you know, whatever petitions may be going on, to show that you don't stand for what happened this weekend. You need to take some kind of action, because just talking about it is not enough. So don't look at the stuff on the media that tells you what the polls are, that makes you draw a conclusion like, oh, I'm good to go. If I don't participate, it doesn't matter, because everybody else got that covered, because the news is telling me so. You remember when you thought like that before the election actually happened, if you're one of those people? So don't do it. If you really care about people, we've got to get engaged. We can't be silent. And most importantly, we can't be indifferent, because indifference is the worst thing you could be. Thank you guys. Serious topic, but I always appreciate you allowing me to have my 2 cents.